Today, I have a conversation with Alex Mashinsky, billionaire inventor, founder, and CEO of Celsius Network, where we discuss everything from green Bitcoin mining to hyperinflation and the history of money. In the 80s, he came to America from Israel and started with nothing. In the 90s and 2000s, he patented voice over IP, was responsible for the installation of wireless cellular signals in the New York City subway system. During the tech boom, he started and exited 7 companies, 3 of which became unicorns, effectively making Alex a billionaire. In 2015, he started his 8th and most ambitious project, Celsius Network, a crypto borrowing and lending platform where he spends most of his time now building a massive community and moving his mission forward of unbanking the world. Welcome to the DYOR Crypto Founders Report, where we speak to the leaders, pioneers, and inventors of the blockchain and crypto space. I'm Mustafa, the founder of DYOR Crypto, and if you want a guide to help you research and navigate the world of blockchain and crypto, then you've come to the right place. Follow now on YouTube and DYOR-crypto.com so you don't miss any talks with the fascinating guests that come on our show. Alex, welcome.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. So, Alex, I'm a big member of the Cardano community. And so my first question is, the people want to know, when Cardano on Celsius, Alex?
So it's on schedule for September. Obviously, we have to rely on third party, to deliver their technical pieces, including some releases from Cardano to be able to actually do all the things we want to do. So it's definitely in the works, and we should have it in the wallet in September 2021.
Okay. 2021. I'll take that. Great. And we wanted to talk to you a little bit about blockchain and cryptocurrency, sort of from a macro perspective. So my first question is about blockchain and cryptocurrency is how you said in a previous interview with NASDAQ that the whole blockchain is going to engulf everything. It's going to engulf the internet. It's going to engulf pretty much everything as we know it. So you said that was going to take place in about 10 years from now. And of course, mass adoption will have already occurred by then. Well, that was in 2018. So when would you say that's we're still on track for that?
Yeah, it's probably going to take a little bit longer. I think I'm sticking with the prediction. I just think that it is going to take a bit longer. The problem is, again, the world we live in is, as you see every day in hacks and in computer problems that we're having with just realizing what is true and what is not true. And we just cannot rely on traditional systems that just use the traditional 7-layer stack to deliver all of that. So, like my wife comes to me sometimes, screams like, how come I can't know that the person sent me the email is actually the person, right? Simple things like that, right? So we really need to build new infrastructure, and to enable all of that, you need different thinking. And I think blockchain-based zero proofs and things like that are some of those foundations. And I think when people realize that you can deploy these utilities on blockchains and they run better, cheaper, faster, and you can implement things like getting paid for reading emails, all kind of micropayments that really were not possible before, you're going to solve the spam issue, and you're going to solve the authenticating the user, and you're going to solve, is this contract really written by the person that claims that it claims? Are the facts authenticated, right? Who are the oracles providing the facts? So all these things that today are impossible, right? It's so easy to deliver fake data, as we know, from elections to, consumer products to you name it, right? So there's a lot of opportunity, but we're still kind of messing with the foundation. As you know, like many of the main kind of new third generation blockchains haven't even launched yet.
Oh, wow.
So Cardano is definitely one of the, I think, the more beautiful and kind of all-encompassing architectures that I've seen out there. So definitely a big fan of what Charles and everybody else is working on.
Yeah, it's quite a community to be with. If you haven't, you need to check it out. So my cousin, I was talking to him last night, and he's like kind of on the edge of crypto, right? And I want to ask this question for people who are like on the sort of the edge. They're not in yet, but they're really thinking about it. What do you tell people who think that it's a scam, that they could be hacked, that it's a Ponzi scheme? How do you get people to overcome those factors?
Yeah, so look, there are groups that we will never convince. So it's not like I try to listen. Like the other day, I jumped into a Clubhouse Maxi Bitcoin Maxi room, and everybody was trying to club me with sticks and just calling me names and so on. But I just came to have a conversation and to understand the other side and maybe learn a few things. So I think there's definitely a group of people that probably we're all wasting our time talking to. Then you have a group of people that basically wants proof that we don't yet have, meaning, okay, we didn't exist for long enough. We don't have enough customers. The code has not proven itself yet, and so on. So I think that group is also kind of, there's not much you can do. I think time is going to cure all ills on that group. And then you have a group that kind of believes some of what we're saying, doesn't believe the rest of it, definitely does not believe that this will cure a lot of the ills that I talked about before. And those are the people that I think we need to kind of focus on, as far as like, and it's a big group. I mean, it's hundreds of millions of people that are, they heard the bad things about crypto, right? Scams and hacks and ransomware and things like that. But then they've also seen kind of the beautiful side of it, right? And what really gets me excited is when I see hundreds and hundreds of engineers leaving companies like Google and Microsoft and Facebook and are coming to basically to work on the blockchain and develop the future of all these computing networks. So when you see that talent, you know that our future is bright.
Mm-hmm. And why don't the legacy systems like Google and Amazon and these big companies that are in tech, why aren't they making moves right now that some of the blockchain companies are doing?
So these are some of the most profitable and largest companies that ever existed. And Google, Facebook, Amazon are larger than many countries. Like if you list the top 200 countries and you look at their GDP and you look at the kind of the annual revenues of Facebook or Google or Apple, you will see that they will rank in, like, I don't know, the top 70 or top 90 countries in the world, right? So I think most people don't understand that a lot of these companies just are trying to do everything possible to secure their franchise, right? So, and in many times the lack of accessibility, like Google basically controls the search worldwide. And if you want to replace it with search that is optimized, that knows who is using this Google for bad purposes, or what is fake search terms, what are bots, right? All that will disappear with the blockchain. So some people say that over 30% of all of Google's clicks are fake, right? They're all generated by bots. So for that's a third of Google's revenues, right? Do they want to get rid of that? Do they want to build the system that's going to get rid of it? So I think a lot of these solutions are going to come from, again, from brilliant developers who are going to come and say, I know how to do search better. I know how to do social media better. I know how to do yield better, right? As an example. And the solution is not going to have anything to do with how we're doing it today, meaning it's not a better version of Facebook. It's not a better version of Google. It's something completely different.
Yeah. Right now, there are all these small companies budding right now, creating decentralized apps and things like that. With Cardano, they're just starting to come out, and I'm talking to people who are involved in that right now. But no one's actually, besides Cardano staking, Celsius is the only one that's offering yield. Could you give us a comparison between Cardano staking and Celsius yield when Cardano is available on Celsius?
Well, so our role is not just to deliver the yield, it's also to provide the infrastructure to enable the entire community to develop things even better than Celsius, right? So we're probably the only company out there with a full API set. We support 14 different blockchains. So just the ability to go not just develop on Cardano, but be able to be compatible with Ethereum, be compatible with Bitcoin, and so on, and really basically manage value across blockchains. All those things are extremely valuable. So again, we want to provide the infrastructure, the development environment, and allow all these brilliant minds to build amazing applications. So yes, we will deliver yield on ADA, but it doesn't mean that we don't want anyone else to experiment and do things even better than we do every day.
Yeah, certainly. And I was actually considering borrowing against my ADA, but I couldn't find any way to do that. That's something that Celsius is going to offer as well, isn't it?
So we already have several ADA customers right now, and we just limited. I think you have to do more than $1 million or something like that. So it's only kind of, we're doing it as an OTC for large customers, but we're not really offering it to general public. I mean, the minute we open it up, the minimum loan is going to be $500. So you'll be able to borrow up to half of your value and you can borrow it in dollars, you can borrow in stable coins, and phase two, you'll be able to borrow Bitcoin against your ADA or any other coin that we support. So it's not just dollar loans, but also crypto loans.
Yeah, that's really interesting. See, myself, I'm an entrepreneur, and I look for ways to, creatively, create value and to be able to be compensated for that. And one thing that I'm really interested in is actually real estate, property, things like that. And I'm looking to get into one of my first properties, but rather than dealing with a traditional bank, I'm considering doing something using my crypto. If ADA loans start to become available, this becomes a possibility now all of a sudden. How does taxation come into the play when borrowing versus selling crypto?
Yeah, so I'm not a tax advisor or a lawyer, so obviously everything I'm telling you is my own opinion and
Of course.
not investment advice or tax advice. But basically, in most countries around the world, when you own an asset, and ADA would be considered an asset or a commodity, and you're taxed on the cost basis. So the local authorities, the tax collectors, want to see, okay, how much did you pay for it? How much did you sell it for? And then they usually have either a short-term gain or a long-term gain. Sometimes the long-term kicks in after a year. Sometimes it's 10 years. I think in Germany, it's like 10 years. You have to wait 10 years for it to be considered. So basically, there are legal ways to get around it. And again, the rich people use this all the time. And I say that on my weekly AMAs all the time, that the laws that the rich people make for themselves, guess what? They apply to all of us. It's just that we're too busy with our daily lives to take advantage of these things. And one of those laws is basically a tax deferral strategy that says, hey, don't sell the asset, borrow against it. What you borrow against it is basically effectively a loan. You pay taxes, you pay interest on that loan, but when you return the loan, you still own your original asset. You never sold your ADA. So the IRS or some other tax collector does not have a basis to come to you and say, you owe me tax, right? So that's really the basis of this tax deferral strategy. And you can easily, again, utilize that to do things like pay your bills, pay your credit cards, or borrow for a down payment on your real estate.
Yeah, that's really exciting to me. So I'm looking forward to that. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about something else. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about mining, the mining operation that you guys are investing in, and energy. So recently you invested $200-300 million into mining operations in North America. Can you tell us some of the reasons why you looked into it and why you made the decision to do that?
Yeah, so I saw some people praising this decision on Twitter, saying, "Hey, you guys are geniuses. You did it right before the what do you call it, the China crackdown, and you're making a killing right now. You're mining because we're mining. I think like we have over like 100 bitcoins a week now that we mine.
That's incredible.
So it's a lot. It's not
Yeah.
like a little, and the truth is that it's not that we're such geniuses. It's really that we want to continuously diversify the sources of yield that we create. And for us, mining is really just a yield machine, right? It's like a factory. It's a Bitcoin factory that makes Bitcoin. Just like staking with ADA is an ADA factory that creates ADA, you know? So our goal was to really basically create one more leg to the stool, right? We have 4 legs already: DeFi, institutions, exchanges, retail lending, right? Margin lending. And we wanted a 5th leg to make it even more stable. Most of our competitors they rely only on one thing. Like, for example, Compound that generates yield is only relying on DeFi on Ethereum, right? Which is a very narrow segment compared to what Celsius does. And that's why their rate, one day they're 12% and one day they're 2% for the same asset, right? So our customers got used to, our million customers got used to the fact that we have very stable rates. And to make them even more stable, we wanted another source of yield. I got to pay my customers with Bitcoin. Well, we're going to get the Bitcoin. I can do it through loans. I can generate yield through loans by charging interest, or I can go and build a Bitcoin factory. So we invested a substantial amount of money. We're probably the largest miner right now in North America, to build the largest Bitcoin factory. And it was great to see the Chinese miners shut down and say, okay, we can't do this anymore, and basically hand off the baton to us.
So what does that do? What does that do when other miners close down? How does that affect you?
So basically, the amount of Bitcoin being created is fixed, right? There's, I think, 6.25 Bitcoin every 10 to 20 minutes. It depends on the load on the network that's being created. And basically, everybody in the world that has a mining equipment is competing for that Bitcoin. So if there is 10 machines competing in it, or 10 million machines competing for it, obviously your chances of winning that Bitcoin, that 6.25 Bitcoin, are very, very different. So the fact that almost half of all the mining in the world is in China, and a lot of it got shut down, dramatically increases our ability to win in that competition. And every time we win, we get virgin, fresh Bitcoin, which is great, you know?
That is great. Yeah. And so you decided to do this investment into mining, and then the China FUD started kicking in. So that has made your mining operation just kind of give it a boost in terms of how much you can produce in terms of mining. So with that being said, let's talk about like renewable energy. You said that Elon Musk is a tourist. Can you explain what that means?
Well, most people, you know, there's a lot of FUD being created by Bitcoin haters and crypto haters, they've tried to ignore us, they've tried to hate us, they've tried to shut us down. And now they're basically trying to say, okay, well, you're using mining, using a lot of electricity, you're ruining the planet. And the truth is that the vast majority of mining for Bitcoin is done with renewable resources. And the truth also is that when you charge your Tesla from the grid, most of that power came from coal and
Right.
from
Mhm.
natural gas. So Bitcoin is more green than Tesla. So that's my response to the argument. Now, Elon jumping from I love Bitcoin to I love DOGE to I hate both of them is basically telling you that he's not in it because he's trying to change the world or he's trying to build a new set of rails. He's busy building rockets, he's busy building electric cars, a few other things, but he's a tourist in crypto, right? He's not here for all the right reasons.
Yeah, as a result, I kind of lost interest in buying a Tesla, but that's the way it is, right? So in terms of adoption for overall cryptocurrency blockchain, where are we in terms of adoption? What phase are we in? Have we crossed the chasm yet, Alex?
Yeah, so I don't think we crossed it. We are trying to build bridges. I think, again, we had two kind of, I would say, killer apps developed in crypto. One is store value, and Bitcoin is a king of store value. And the second killer app is yield, right? I think, but besides that, we have not seen much of global adoption. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think platforms like Cardano is definitely, I think, again, a huge new opportunity for developing things that were either too expensive or not possible or too slow on traditional networks. So we really don't know what is going to come out from these third generation blockchains, and I think a lot of people are underestimating that, right? So we need to build two bridges. One is a bridge to traditional finance, where we need to onboard billions of people who are kind of stuck, not earning any yield, basically seeing their base currency, fiat currency, devalue or debase by the central banks, right? So we need to bring them over from the traditional finance world to CeFi or DeFi.
Mm-hmm.
And the second bridge we need to build is to basically, I call it a super app or a portfolio of services that gives you everything you need to detach or unbank yourself from the old world, right? So at Celsius, our mission is we always say we want to unbank the banked and bank the unbanked, right?
Yes.
So those are the two missions. I think, again, Charles also always talks about banking 1 billion people that don't have any access to the finance world. So, but it's not just banking them, right? I mean, a lot of people are probably going to lose all their money if you just gave them an account and they suddenly, without knowing anything, started jumping into commodities or stocks or whatever that they don't know anything about. So what Celsius is doing, it basically acts as your shepherd. It helps you navigate these areas, knowing that your partner, the Celsius as your partner, is always acting in your best interest. So I think we have to create guardrails especially for the unbanked, because when they're going to put some money in, that's going to be all their money. It's a life savings.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to make sure that they don't lose it. So what we've seen in this run up this year, we've seen this run up to 65,000 and then drop to 30,000, which, again, unfortunately, I predicted that in February and March of this year. What happened, the net result is that we lost 1.5 million users who got liquidated on platforms like Binance and others that gave them leverage, with people that had no clue what they're doing, right? They thought they're going to get rich quick. They got liquidated, boom. Who made all the money? Not them. So we want to make sure that it's not just adoption. When we build that bridge to traditional finance, that when these people, when people from fiat land come to crypto land, right? When they land and they come and they basically transact with us, we protect them. We don't just lose them. So I think those are the opportunities, and again, we're working on parts and pieces of it, but there's a lot of other companies also trying to collaborate and create value around these ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do you think are going to be you mentioned killer apps, store value, yield, and you said it's hard to predict, but if you had to, what's on your radar? Like, what are some killer apps that could potentially be revolutionary?
So I'll give you an example. My wife started a company. I'm obviously I'm involved in it. I invested in it and so on, but it's called usastrong.io, and what it does, it created a marketplace for products that are made in the United States, and it's using the blockchain to verify the components. So when you buy something and somebody tells you, "Oh, I made it here," it's not just you made it here. What percentage of the components are US made? Where was it assembled? What's the total value? And again, so you have one place to find all these products, because today you go to Amazon, it's like 70-80% foreign goods and you have no clue. You go to Etsy, it's also almost 70% foreign goods. So you think you're buying local, but really, when you get the box and it's all Chinese characters, and then you go, wait a second, I thought this was made Etsy. I thought it was like arts and craft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, arts and craft in Shenzhen, China.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
leveraging the blockchain as a immutable ledger that records all of these transactions, both from the manufacturer and the supply chain. Both sides have to verify that, and then providing it to the customer, and the customer can verify, right? With zero knowledge, basically zero proof, can verify that, okay, this was actually made in the US. Here are the components. This is where it was assembled. Here are the pieces that came from these manufacturers, and so on. So those are it also provides transparency and avoids child labor and a million other things that we're all struggling with. And, we find out about it after already 10 million pairs of shoes were made, not when the process is just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have real-time audit, real-time verification, and it's just a beautiful implementation of the blockchain and something people need coming together. And this is a great example of something that you should do on Cardano, because you need a low-cost blockchain to handle billions of transactions. And again, get around centralized organizations like Amazon that basically dictate what you buy. They decide for you who is the vendor, because they basically pop it to the top, whoever pays them the most in ads, and that's who you choose. You look at the price, you go, oh, yeah, that looks good, click, right? And you just did not support your local neighborhood manufacturer.
Yeah, it's a fundamental shift in the way the economics of it. The incentives are different. So with blockchain and cryptocurrency, the incentives are distributed across the network. One thing that you say a lot that I think about is the biggest network always wins. The largest network always wins, and that's one of the reasons why I'm in the Cardano community. But what are some other networks to pay attention to? I mean, I know Bitcoin, Ethereum, but what about are there any financially associated, like, for example, TV? I know you invented voice over IP, internet protocols, things like that. What do you have anything that you could suggest that we pay attention to?
So first, I've said this several times, that I don't believe Cardano wins by stealing customers or ideas from Ethereum. I think Cardano wins by finding the next 3, 4, 5 killer applications, right? And like the example I gave it with USA Strong is a perfect example of how something super simple can be a solution, not just for the 330 million people who live in the US. I'm sure Italians would love to buy local products. I'm sure Japanese would prefer to buy local. So it's a global idea that may be starting here in the US, but going somewhere else. So there's definitely competition for a lot of this. Obviously, Polkadot, Solana, but there's also competition from other types of blockchains. So if you look at basically Facebook, right, and JP Morgan, they're creating a corporate version or centralized version of what we're all working on. So we believe in decentralization, we believe in open source, we believe in basically the best idea wins. But their idea of it is exactly the opposite. Like, no, we know how to run it for you. Leave it to the pros. Let us run a centralized version for you. Pass the tolls. We are the toll collector. We decide when and what code to release, right? You can't fork it. And all that stuff is really, and it's not clear that the public open blockchain is going to win. The third version of this is what China is doing. So China is saying, hey, CBDC or central bank digital currencies are a replacement for money. We're going to be the first ones out with the digital yuan. And we're going to convince, they have 68 countries that agreed to join their Silk and Road, Belt and Road initiative and part of their Silk Road. And investing $1 trillion, right, in this project. And guess how you transact on that Belt and Road initiative? You can only use digital yuan. So it's very hard for the public blockchain to compete against those type of opportunities. Then look, I went through this already, right? In the 90s, I remember, everybody talking about the information superhighway, and we weren't sure if it's going to come from IBM or from Microsoft or from the public internet.
Yeah.
And the public internet in the early 90s, 92, 93, everybody laughed at it, saying, what? You're going to do what? Right? And so it wasn't clear that it's going to become the global standard. And it's not clear this time that the public version, the open source version, is going to win, unless all of us got together and supported each other. Just like Buy American products, we all supported products that are on the blockchain to basically provide enough utility, enough use, enough growth, not burn 1.5 million users just because of greed and because of like we're charging them fees on their way up and we're charging them fees on the way down. Right? So unfortunately, too many of the players in the crypto space today are here just for profit. They're here just to basically take advantage of the volatility, and they didn't show up with a mission. I can tell you that the Cardano community is definitely mission driven. I mean, everybody I talk to Cardano, no matter what I tweet about, the first answer is when Cardano, when ADA. That's the first thing that comes through. So I know that obviously people are super excited about what's coming, and again, we're investing a lot of resources working with the Cardano Foundation to really make sure that we can deliver some of these services on top of the infrastructure that the chain is going to launch.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a little bit about a little kind of history question. I know you seem like a history buff, so I have to ask you questions like that. But you mentioned in a previous talk that from empire to empire, there's a baton that is being passed, and it's usually in gold, right? This time around, even before, since the United States empire has started, really, it hasn't really been about gold. It's been about other stuff, right? When do you think this next baton is bound to be handed over, and what will it be made out of?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in the past, if you look at Genghis Khan, or you look at the Ottoman Empire or the Roman Empire, normally you created wealth by conquering other countries, physically conquering them with your army and taking away their wealth, right? Basically confiscating the means of production, confiscating their gold, and charging taxes and accumulating wealth, right? And as we kind of turn into the 19th and 20th century, we switch that to who has commercial advantage. So obviously, the United States became a dominant global superpower after World War II. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that the rest of the world was decimated in this world war, while the United States just made everything for the rest of the world. So we had the best manufacturing facilities, we had the strongest currency, we had everything, right? So then in 1971, we go off the gold standard, right? And we start basically debasing the currency. And this year, 2021, the Fed printed 40% of all the dollars that ever existed in over 270 years. So you take 270 years, and almost the same amount of money was printed in 1 year as did in 270 years. So obviously something is very wrong and something is very difficult. And the question is, okay, how much more room does the dollar have? And the only reason the dollar hasn't lost its status as reserve currency is because everybody else is printing as well. The Chinese, the Brits, the Japanese, the Europeans, right? Everybody's printing like crazy. So in relative terms, the dollar hasn't lost much. But in terms of Bitcoin or in terms of Ethereum or in terms of Cardano, they lost over 99% of its value in 10 years. So it's very hard to predict who is going to replace. There is, like I said, a three-way race between CBDCs, open ledger, kind of cryptocurrencies, and something in the middle, right? So we don't know really who and how this is going to happen. And the dollar may continue being a reserve currency for 100 years or more. But my prediction is that if the Fed continues to do what it's doing right now, the dollar doesn't have 10 or 20 years left in it as the reserve currency of the planet, as basically the main currency being used to settle international trade.
Yeah, and there's some other systemic issues too, like we're piling up debt. There's just there's too much of that going on, and people just seem to think that it's okay. But personally, I'm a little uncomfortable about that. Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So it's called MMT, right? Modern monetary theory.
Yeah.
Where basically people are saying if all your debt is denominated in your own currency, you can print as much currency as you want. And it's neither modern nor a theory. This has never been proven before. So everybody's copying Japan because Japan has been doing this for 30 years and Japan is still kicking. Nothing happened there. But Japan is not the reserve currency of the planet. So when you do the same thing with the dollar and you're basically printing a tremendous amount of money and you think there's not going to be any inflation, you think there's not going to be any consequences, and then disaster strikes. And again, we don't know how fast it's going to happen. In the beginning, it happens slowly, but then it happens fast. If you look at the history has about 700 examples of fiat currencies going to zero, disappearing. And I'm not talking just about corner cases like the Zimbabwe rand or Zimbabwe dollar or the rand or some other things. I'm talking about major currencies that basically, like before, World War II, the German Deutschmark was basically lost 99.999999. You could put 100 nines there of its value, and a lot of it had to do with the war reparations and again them printing tremendous amount of currency, which obviously did not help the German economy.
Yeah, I mean, it led to World War II. So I mean, that didn't help anybody. I actually have a really, really close friend of mine who's 74 years old, and he actually lived in Israel for a long time. And he told me he lived during a time when there was hyperinflation going on. He was telling me how things like his mortgage, his mortgage went from being something like $400 in terms of USD to like the equivalent of like $4 USD, and that everything just skyrocketed in a very, very, very short period of time. Is that potentially possible in this kind of inflationary environment that we're in right now? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I actually lived in Israel during the same period of time and experienced 400% inflation. And basically, your money wasn't good. If you didn't buy something with it very quickly, you lost a lot of it, of your value. And so, it's definitely something that we've seen again and again. Again, the United States feels that it can control it or it can avoid it. But I can tell you that, you can probably control it when the numbers are small. But here we're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars of both debt and new currency being printed worldwide, right? Equivalent value. And the entire world economy is only 250 trillion. So when you're printing the equivalent of the entire world's economy, major issues are going to happen. And I want to point out one thing that most people don't understand. So when you ask people about this money printing, they say, well, we had Corona. That's why the government is printing this money. In September, and this is all public information, you can just Google to verify what I'm saying. In September of 2019, this is 3 to 4 months before Corona was even started. The first person got infected by Corona in China. The repo market, right, or repurchasing market in the United States, where banks buy from each other or settle with each other, froze, meaning no bank in the United States trusted another bank to buy or sell or borrow or lend in these overnight transactions. And the Fed had to step in initially with 600 billion. All in, there was over 900 billion in a matter of a month, right? Very quickly. Boom. They injected 600 billion like right away. And then they told all the banks, don't worry about it. You don't have to trust each other. We will be the settlement party. You can settle with us, and we'll make sure that every piece of paper is acceptable. So that was the beginning of the collapse. We just used Corona as an excuse to print trillions of dollars. But the US economy, the dollar was already teetering in September of 2019.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've always kind of I'm just always reading stuff, and since really as far as I can remember, I've been reading stuff about how inflation is coming, and I'm talking about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I'm picking up books about the economics and things like that. And this has been talked about for a long time, but I feel like we're really coming close to some kind of catastrophe from that, and that really concerns me. So let's since this is kind of like a grim topic, let's kind of switch it up a little bit. So you have 6 kids, you've had 8 companies. That's an incredible feat. How many hours a week do you work as a CEO? And what's your daily routine?
Yeah, well, this is an embarrassing topic because most people think that, I get to do a lot of other stuff. And, like they say, oh, you need hobbies, you need this, you need that. I don't have any of those things. So because I love what I do, I only work on projects that I'm really passionate about. I don't feel it like work. Like for most people, they're dredging. Oh my God, I have to go to work. I have an 8-hour shift or whatever, or I have to do this or that. And like, they can't wait for it to end, right? And go home and, watch a sitcom or something else. I don't have that. My entire day or my week is all about pushing the agenda for the projects that I'm working on. So like you mentioned, voice over IP, getting global adoption for voice over IP, right? I did wireless in the subways, getting the city to approve something that no one has done in 100 years, right? I mean, New York City was the last large city in the world with the largest underground subway system, which did not have connectivity. You couldn't get a signal underground.
I know.
Seriously,
Yeah.
like it's New York City, guys. Come on. So, and even that took like 7 years to get approval. Like we took us 7 years to get a franchise from the MTA to actually start building the service, and another 5 years to build the service because you had to wire 300 underground stations. So none of these things are easy. I don't pick the easy projects, you know. Oh, let's create another messenger or some another search engine, or I don't know what. So a lot of the projects I'm involved in, if they all have the same theme, where there is some kind of a concentrated monopoly that decides for you, okay, you're going to pay $3 a minute to talk to your parents overseas, or we think it's not safe to put Wi-Fi or 5G in the underground, so we're not going to give it to you. We don't care that your life depends on it, right? Or the banks deciding that you should only earn 0.5% on your money, right? So these are things that, you know, I'm an immigrant. I grew up with nothing. I said that I grew up with an outhouse. The house I was born in Russia did not have indoor toilet, didn't have plumbing. And people look at me like, what are you talking about? You're a billionaire. And I'm like, that doesn't mean I didn't grow up with an outhouse. You know,
Sometimes you need an outhouse to make you be a billionaire, right?
well, so my point is that, you know, I grew up appreciating everything. Like I had one toy, right? I had like one pair of pants. My parents, I never even think about asking my parents for anything because I knew how hard they work to keep us going and everything else. So that's completely different. Like, again, I have 6 kids, and many times, again, there's something breaks, they just get a new item, they order it on Amazon, they don't even ask me, and things just keep showing up in the house. And I'm saying to myself, how far we have come, you know, where they don't see the value of money, of the value of work the same way I do. So it's definitely a big disconnect, and it's something that, again, I'm trying to fix from a structural standpoint. It's not about, you know, educating my kids or your kids or somebody else generation to do this or that, or having them read history books. It's about creating a new set of rails. Like with crypto, we're talking about a new set of rails on which we're going to build things and build a new society, right? I mean, that's really what I'm pushing for. And, you know, I call crypto decentralized Buddhism because it allows all of us to detach from this rat race where we are getting paid for how much profit we generate for our boss or his boss's boss, and be valued based on our contribution to society. And that's a big ask. I'm not expecting, I expect to fail in delivering that. But if there's 1% chance that I can succeed, that is worth kind of like this effort what I'm dedicating the rest of my life to.
Yeah. So where do you draw your inspiration from, your creativity? Where does that come from? Besides, I guess hardship does that to someone where it turns them into someone who becomes resilient. But where do you draw your inspiration, your passion from?
Well, I'm wired differently. So I'm left-handed. I have weird habits. So I have like reading problems. So definitely my brain is not wired in the same way that the normal people are, right? In a good way and in a bad way. So, and in school, you know, my teachers and everybody else was trying to make me be just like everybody else, you know, and then I realized that I have a unique skill, right? I can basically project myself into the future, imagine a whole nother reality. And sometimes that even come true, you know, that reality actually comes to pass. So that is something that most people just can't do. Most people have a problem kind of like extending beyond today or this week or next week or whatever, right? And so trying to imagine, okay, what does the financial world looks like in 10 years?
Mhm.
What does the telecom world looks like in 10 or 20 years, right? And so on is something that the answers are voice over IP or yield on crypto or
Mm.
free wireless connectivity, right, or whatever. So I have 100 ideas. The problem is knowing which ones are good and which ones are bad. Most of them are bad ideas, right? So for example, I started a company called GroundLink 5 years before Uber. It was the first app in the App Store. It was the first app on Android that offered you ground transportation. And our slogan was "Happy drivers equals happy customers," kind of similar to Celsius, but came Uber and did exactly the opposite. They said, let's subsidize rides to yappy customers. Let's cut what the drivers earn in half, and we will have a successful company. Now, Uber has never generated profit in its history,
Hmm.
and they probably will never generate a profit. And yet they managed to win the market share, right? We couldn't raise enough money. We couldn't compete with them head to head. They were cutting prices by half, right, of what they charge. And who won? We have higher congestions in cities. The 3 million drivers that work for Uber earn half of what we used to pay them. And now all the rates went up. The rates that they charge now are higher than what GroundLink charged. And all that profit goes to Uber and Lyft and companies like that, right? So even though they're not profitable, but they're collecting all those extra fees. So basically no one won, right? No one really ended up ahead, but we created this colossal bureaucracy where, no one really benefits. So sometimes society doesn't do the right thing, or it doesn't do the right thing the first time. And you asked about opportunities on the blockchain. Moving Uber to the blockchain, where you can basically source, connect, and deliver most of that value to the driver, is one example of something that is definitely a viable application. I'm too busy with Celsius, but if I wouldn't, I would be seeking revenge on Uber and building it on Cardano.
Oh, I'm gonna write that one down. So who influenced you the most? Who was your biggest influence?
Yeah, so again, I'm not a big reader because I'm very slow reader, right? So I consume most of what I learn through video, through conversations. And once in a while I would discover these amazing people who lived in the past, and I would just read or watch anything that was written about them. So Nikola Tesla is one example of somebody who was extraordinary, somebody who built our entire alternating current kind of like network. That's a network that's bigger than the internet. Still a lot of places on the planet where there is no internet but a lot of electricity. But there's no place where there's internet and there is no electricity, right? So it's the world's largest network. And obviously Feynman on the kind of like quantum mechanics and things like that. Albert Einstein on like basically all of the theory of relativity and things like that. So definitely more on the sciences and on the kind of like inventor slash discoverer. And again, all those people were eccentric. They were weird. They were initially no one listened to them, and they proved that their ideas were right. Some of that proof came after they were dead already, but they proved it, right? So I think you learn that having conviction, if you have the right idea, having conviction, even if everybody says no to you, and every one of my startups, you talked about the fact that I have 8 startups, everyone, including Celsius, I pitched over 200 times. I pitched to 200 investors or more.
Yeah,
I think Celsius we probably pitched 400 times, so definitely um, you need to have the grit, you need to have the conviction, and it doesn't matter how many no's you get, you just got to keep on walking. And for most people, that is so painful and is so humiliating that they just can't take it. And I understand that. I mean, it's not like because you go and you sit with some of the world's smartest investors, right? And you work for months just to get that appointment, and they give you half an hour and you pitch it, and they basically look at you and like say, okay, next. They don't give it even a second thought. And sometimes it's because the dream is too far. And sometimes it's because they just don't understand what you're talking about. So I persevered. I definitely did not let that get to me. And with Celsius, we decided to fund it with the community, right? We decided we're not going to go to VCs. We're not going to go and get the blessing of somebody who knows less than us. We're going to go to the community who's going to consume the service and explain to them what we're going to build, and have them basically fund the project, which is a beautiful structure, right? The initial coin offer structure, which again, I think got a bad rap because too many people abused the model. But just like from the internet, we got maybe 5 great companies, Netflix, Amazon, Google, Facebook. From the crypto revolution, if you get 10 great companies, that would be amazing. So the fact that there's like 10,000 projects out there and most of them have failed, that's exactly what happened with the internet. Remember pets.com?
Yeah. What happened with them? Didn't Amazon like take them
Well,
out or something?
they
Or?
bought the sock for nothing. Yeah, you can,
I see. I see. Yeah. So I guess before moving on to my next question, maybe you can do like a little. What's different this time around from the tech boom? Is there anything that you could say that's like definitely like not like uncharted?
Well, it's definitely a boom. We don't know if it's a bubble or not. We'll
Mhm.
find out pretty soon.
Oh, okay.
I think, again, a lot of people are in it just for quick profits, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and you need those. I mean, it's not like the internet would not be what it is today unless everybody bought tech and internet stocks in the late 90s and funded the fiber optic and the routers and the infrastructure build out that we all using today, right? Your Netflix wouldn't work without all that fiber being laid in 99 and 2000.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, and same thing with railroads, and the same thing with all of the manias that we went through. But again, we have an opportunity to create a new society. I'm just frustrated that both like the Fed and the government are spending money on old industry. They're saving the cruise ships. They're saving the airlines. They did not let any of these companies fail and
Mhm.
file bankruptcy. We have a process for that. They decided to put a giant safety net under the entire US economy
Huh.
instead of taking those precious resources, investing in AI, investing in machine learning, investing in blockchain, right? So,
Mhm.
so the money that's coming to blockchain is mostly from the fringes, right? Like retail investors. Now we're starting to see larger funds. So like Andreessen Horowitz just announced a $2.2 billion fund dedicated just to crypto, right? So
Yeah.
the blockchain. So those are definitely great opportunities. And I think, um, you know, but blockchain development is not a fast development. It's not like, okay, I'm going to launch an app and I'm going to get 100 million users tomorrow, right? I mean, we are slowly adding users, we're slowly adding infrastructure. So it kind of reminds me of the 96, 97 timeframe where, again, it wasn't clear if the internet is really here to stay, who's going to win, the public internet, the private internet. Microsoft sold you intranet. They said, don't use the public internet, it's not safe. Come use our intranet, right? So, which is kind of similar to what JP Morgan is trying to sell you. So history repeats itself again and again. And but it rhymes. So this time it's going to be, the applications are going to be different. Who succeeds is going to be different. I'm continuing the fight, decentralized Buddhism. So we'll see if anyone listens to me.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will be listening to you. So why did you come to US?
That's a funny story. I was actually, I had some dealings in Europe, and so I flew from Israel to Paris. I had to sign some things and meet some people and whatever. And it was cheaper to get a round ticket to New York via Paris than it was to just get a round trip to Paris. Sometimes the airlines give you that because they want more of that business. So I had the stop to go to New York, and I finished my business in France, and I was like, okay, let's go. I was just gonna go there for a few days, and that was 33 years ago.
New York, huh?
Yeah. So it all had to do with Air France charging less. I should thank them. I should write them a thank you letter to Air France. It all had to do with the fact that they charge less to go to New York than to Paris. That's what the secret is to why I'm living in New York.
And it all started from there, huh? But you were an entrepreneur before you came to New York. You were doing things. I know you studied electrical engineering, and you were, I think, tinkering around with electronics and doing things like that, kind of like what Steve Jobs was doing with Steve Wozniak. So you were already sort of like entrepreneurial before you came to the US. But when you came, how did you get established here? How did you get started?
Yeah, so I definitely, my hobby was to go to junkyards, which in Israel, junkyards have a lot of military access, military equipment. And usually you would get like the latest and greatest microchips or memory or whatever. So I would basically be scavenging different equipment to try to build things myself. So I had this giant lab in my house, in my room, and I would tinker with everything and not go to school. My mother, like she would come in the morning and say, "Are you going to school today?" And I would say, "No." So, because I had an agreement with my head of class that I would only come for exams, for tests. The only problem was that she was pregnant, and she basically had a child before our graduation, before my last year graduation. So the new teacher, new head of a class came in and said, "I don't know anything about this agreement you have. You didn't show up. You don't graduate, So they kicked me out of the school. Basically, I had to go study somewhere else and do external exams and things like that. But so that was a funny story. But I was basically totally, this experiment of Alex Mashinsky could have been a disaster or could have been a great success. We don't know. In an alternate universe where things, just a few bits or a few atoms were behaving differently, I'm probably one of the world's greatest black hats hacking this or that. I'm probably in Siberia hacking the United States, or I don't know what, So who knows? The world does work in mysterious ways, and I did have my own business since I was 16. I served in the military, so I got to work on exciting technology in the military. Some of it is cryptography as well, cryptography based. So definitely got sharpened my teeth on a lot of this stuff. And in Israel, you go to the military, like you have other people's lives in your hands. Like you make a mistake. Yeah. This was during the Lebanon war, and I was in the infantry. Like I was in the pilot program. I didn't want to be a pilot, so they punished me, threw me into the infantry. Golani, that's the name of the unit, Golani, and we were deployed in Lebanon, and it was not fun. It was definitely, again, people's lives were in your hands, and so it was, you grow up fast. You don't have time for social media. You don't have time for anything like the kids today do. You discover who you are very, very quickly.
I'm sure your military history has a lot to do with, who you are today and your drive and things like that too. But when you actually got to New York, so what was like your first, your first job?
So I didn't answer your question. You're right. Thanks for the follow-up. So when I arrived in New York, again, I did not show up having grand plans of conquering the big city. I had a ticket. I had a ticket to fly back. I had a plastic bag. I didn't even have a suitcase. I had a plastic bag. And I was like, I'm gonna hang out until I run out of money, and then I'm just gonna find my way to the airport and fly back. That was my plan, like.
Yeah, you were by yourself?
Yeah, I was totally by myself. I didn't know anybody. So I met this guy who was looking for a roommate and in New York, and so I was like, great, like let's I'll be a roommate. I think my rent was $250 a month or something like that. And I called AT&T and they gave me a line. They just, like they installed a line in this apartment without any money up front or anything. I was like, wow, these people are generous, like you can't do that in other countries. You have to deposits and whatever. Yeah. So, and back then I was doing international commerce. I was doing this, like trying to match orders or requests from all over the world. Again, this is before Google, before search, before anything, in like 1988, right? Oh. And I would spend my days in the library on 42nd Street and Fifth Avenue, kind of, the library on 41st Street. There's two libraries, one, the big public library, and then there's another one on 41st Street where all of the technical stuff is. So I would read through like chemical directories and all kind of like directories of manufacturers and things like that to try to match, because I brought with me all this stuff from Europe. I had people looking to buy things, and I would try to find manufacturers. And I landed on this amazing deal that was worth like $23 million back then, which was all the money in the world for me. It was like, I had a few $100s left, right? So it was like, and he was a buyer, he was a seller. I matched it, and they both agreed to do a transaction worth $23 million, buying sodium cyanide, which is a chemical used for gold mining. Mm-hmm. And you would say, what? Gold mining? So it was just amazing. It was like, so obviously I stayed for several months, and I got this deal done, and I was like, this country is amazing. Mm-hmm. I'm not going anywhere, But then I learned that it's not so easy. Like your first deal might be amazing, but then you can work for 5 years and not do anything, because everything else I looked at was like, I just did a $23 million deal. What are you talking to me about? Tiny little stuff. So, but I got to work on voicemail before voice of IP. And my company was the first company to kind of build PC-based voicemails. Everybody back then used mainframes or mini computers like VMX and Octel. And we had a company that basically, VoiceSmart, that did PC-based with dialogic boards and all kind of other stuff. And that was like the preamble for creating voice over IP, because I already had all the technical skills and all the code and everything. And all I had to do was a link between the voice channel on a dialogic and the TCP/IP session. And so I wrote that stack, and then the rest is history. So we built the first. It was like a Watson slash, Alexander Graham Bell moment, because I had two nodes, and basically we just had enough bandwidth to basically run one voice call. And I was like talking on the one simulator. I had a phone simulator on one side, and you would ring the simulator, just like Graham Bell would ring the phone back then. And on the other side, it would ring, and you would talk, and you were like, "This works." and so we demonstrated that to AT&T. We demonstrated it to a few other people, and they were like, "This is great. We need it in Japan. We need it in Korea. We need it." So it was definitely, an amazing moment. And I realized I discovered something that the world is going to need. Filed the patents, wrote the protocols, all that stuff. So this is 94, 95. So that was definitely one of my best years. It was, I couldn't sleep for like a week. I mean, the adrenaline was just pumping like crazy, right? I would just fall asleep and be like, ding, and just keep running.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so how did you have to sell it, or like how did that actually monetize for you? How did you monetize that?
Yeah. So we never enforced the patent. So basically everybody's using that tech today.
Yeah.
And I built a company called Arbinet, the sole founder, right? And took it public, and it was worth, I think at the peak was worth like 1.7 billion or something.
Was that your unicorn company, or?
That was my first unicorn, yes.
So can you tell us what that means? What is a unicorn?
So a unicorn is a company that's worth over $1 billion. It's just that $1 billion in 97 or 99 is probably 10 times or 20 times more than what $1 billion is today. So we still use that term, but back then to be a unicorn was 1 in 100,000. Today, I think just in the US, I think there's like 500 unicorns, right? So, so today a unicorn is not necessarily a high hurdle. Back then, creating a company worth over $1 billion, you would be in a club of 5 or 6 people. That's it, So, for example, when Arbinet went public in 2004, Google went public the same year, and Arbinet performed much better on the first day. We doubled our price. And Google actually went down. So investors looked at Arbinet and said, "This is the future." And they looked at Google and said, "Well, we're not sure about the search engine company." Obviously the valuations were different, but my point is just about the performance of the IPO. So we were the best performing IPO of 2004.
I see. And so Arbinet was your first company, correct?
No, I know it was probably the third.
I see. Yeah,
third. Yeah.
Interesting. So with Arbinet, that went public. How many other of your companies went public? Did they all go public? Or?
No, look. Usually you either go public or you do a trade sale, meaning somebody buys your company, or sometimes you just leave. You don't like, I definitely, I don't stay forever. Like if normally when I was younger, the investors, because my first 7 companies were all VC backed, venture backed. And normally the VCs or the venture guys think that you're too young, you don't know anything. We're going to bring somebody with gray hair or no hair to replace you, because what do you know? You're just a kid from Russia, who grew up with an outhouse. How disgusting is that? So I was basically replaced, or I left as CEO several times. And usually what you do then is you, again, either sell your stake or you wait until the company is sold. But,
well, it happens to the best of the best. Steve Jobs is like a perfect example of that, right? So Celsius would be your 8th company now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So how did you teach yourself everything that is necessary to become a CEO? Who were your mentors, or how did you teach yourself everything?
So look, there's a lot of books on tape and books that you could read, and best practices and cliff notes and videos and interviews. And so I was like, I would read every magazine. Like I would read back when magazines were the thing, so Success Magazine and Entrepreneur Magazine and Inc. Magazine and Forbes and Fortune and Business Week and you name it. I would know every story about every entrepreneur, their history, what did they do successfully, what they did not do successfully, and what you learn is that for a lot of these people, like what happened actually happens to them by chance. Like they become a unicorn by chance. They become successful by chance, and very few people can do it again and again and again, right? So, most entrepreneurs are one-hit wonders, right? And VCs, that will tell you the truth, will admit that they don't really know who's gonna succeed and who's not gonna succeed, right? So a lot of VCs just do spray and pray. They have a lot of skills, but they basically betting on the entrepreneur. They're betting that this or that person will persevere or will pivot, come up with a different idea, or do something else. So it's definitely not, it's very hard to be a venture capitalist. It's not like you just hear a great idea and you invest in it and it becomes a unicorn. If that was the case, then everybody would be a great venture capitalist. But the reality is that, in most cases, you don't know if it's a great idea. And by the time it proved itself, the valuation is already too high and you can't make any money. So you got to invest when the idea is still completely crazy. Like for Airbnb for me which is a hugely successful company. When I heard the idea, I was like, who's going to want to allow their other people to sleep in their living room or in their whatever spare bed? So all these things are things that they don't develop in a way necessarily the way you're planning. And Celsius is the same way, right? Celsius is definitely something that most people, when they heard, okay, you're going to pay me 10% of my dollars on my stable coins, that makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, the banks pay 0.5%. Actually, most of my friends even told me, like, if you told me 4%, I would actually give you money, but you said 10, so I'm not going to give you anything. Like what happened to you, Alex? You became a scammer?
Well, that's how you know you're onto something. That's how you know you're onto something good.
That's right. And I kept telling them, look, it just shows you how much the banks are stealing from you, that I can afford, and they can afford to pay you these rates. They just insist on giving it to their shareholders. So those are all things that you live and learn. I mean, I don't think that, I think, I had several failures. It's not like every company I did was a huge success, right? So 3 unicorns, 3 out of 8, that is pretty good success. I'm willing to invest in any entrepreneur who is going to tell me I'm going to create 3 unicorns out of 8. I'll invest in every one of their companies. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, you only need one, really.
Right. But Celsius is growing so fast that we may be the fastest growing company in history. So, and I wouldn't say that lightly. Having read every other article about every other company, I can tell you that this is definitely, I think Uber holds the record as the fastest company to 60 billion worth of value. And let's see how fast Celsius gets there.
When was the first time you ever heard the word blockchain or cryptocurrency being used?
So look, the blockchain is a 30-year-old technology. It's not a new technology. So when I was working on Voice over IP back in the 90s, Scott Stornada and a bunch of other people were working on blockchains in Belcourt, just, I think it's like 8 or 9 miles from where I was, right? I mean, it was like really close in New Jersey, right? So, so it's not a new technology. I just could never come up with a use case that I thought was, that I got super excited about. And even 2009, one of my employees, I tweeted this out, just a copy of the email that one of my employees sent me from 2009 saying, 2008 or 2009, I don't remember the exact date, but it's on the email, saying, hey, you got to look at this blockchain thing. here is Bitcoin. We got to work on it. And I dug through it and I said, this will never scale. This will never work. It needs too much electricity. It's not blah, blah, blah. I had every excuse in the world. So I looked at it again and again and again. And it's one of those, I normally pride myself of being able to see, again, discover the next big thing ahead of people. Here, I missed it completely. Like because I'm on the technology side, I'm always focused on bigger, better, faster, cheaper, right? The Bitcoin blockchain is none of those things. It's not bigger, it's not faster, it's not cheaper, right? So it was very, very hard for me to reprogram myself and think about it in terms of, okay, it solves the double spend issue. It solves the authenticity or this like immutability of information. And those things are things that the computer network needs to exist. Like it's not little things, it's huge things, right? And the funny thing is that I worked on a startup back in 2003, 2004, and it was supposed to deliver electronic money. So kind of like PayPal, but not PayPal, that was focused on trying to solve the double spend issue, right, in a different way through attachments to emails and a decentralized like DNS kind of service that kind of enabled verification of authenticity of any transfer. And again, I never got anywhere, and I moved on and did other things. But actually after that I did the Uber before Uber, right? Groundlink. So I was already conditioned that is a problem. I just did not look at Bitcoin as a solution to that problem. So when I looked at it again in 2015, and Daniel Leon, my co-founder in Celsius, kind of like would just come to my desk every day and say, hey, you really need to look at this. You really need to look at this. This is something that everybody works on. And I kept shooing him away. And then one day I just looked at this, because after Mt. Gox, I realized, okay, I'm definitely not getting something. I'm definitely missing something. And then I said to myself, you know what, this yield is going to disappear from the world. Just looking at if you look at the bond market, you see that it's going down over the last 20 years, right? It used to be like 14% and it went down to basically, so in 2015, I think it went down to like 6%. I was like, okay, it's going to go down to zero. And if it's going down to zero, if we can deliver yield on the blockchain, that's it. We don't need anything else. So I definitely got that like in a second, but that was only 2015, 2016.
So when did you get the actual idea for Celsius, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so again, Daniel and I were talking about, we started kind of looking at investments in the space, and I had coins, I was trading a little bit, we were investing in different startups, and I really like this idea of yield just never left my brain. It's like instead of Daniel knocking on my desk every day saying, what about this? Now my brain was doing it to myself, right? It was already in my brain. It's like one neuron that's just screaming, hey, this is the answer. Listen to me. That's, and the rest of the neurons are just saying, no, shut up. You're distracting us. We're trying to watch a movie. No, this is it.
I see.
So that's kind of like what's happening. You have this, like your brains have this like layers upon layers of connectivity of neurons, and it's like flashes, right? Like it's basically what we perceive as reality are just flashes inside our brain, right? So which translate into images or into memories or into things like that. So when you have that like continuous annoying, like you have to think about me, it's kind of, like I already know, it's a pattern recognition. I already know that this is it. It's a gut, it turns into a gut feeling. right? Boom. So I've done it so many times that I don't need to think about it. When I know that there's something good, I'm like, yep, I got you, no problem.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
so, but you gotta, as a young person, you have to discover. Like, I think each one of us has a unique skill set to be the best in the world at something, and it's about discovering what are you the best in the world at, right? Because each one of us is a unique experiment that never going to be repeated again, right? So okay, so how do you figure out what is that unique skill you have, right? And when you discover it, if you just hone on that, you let everything else go, then you become the best in the world at that skill set, right? Or you have a chance to become one.
Very interesting. So, Satoshi Nakamoto, a woman? I've heard you say that before. Tell me more.
Well, I don't think it's several people. Um, I think it's one person, and I think it's somebody who really, just like we're trying to do, cares about the world fundamentally. They didn't create Bitcoin to profit from it or um, to basically make the world, replace the world's financial system with something worse. They were trying to fix the problem, right? And create something that kind of took 7, 8 different pieces that already existed, the blockchain, a ledger, Merkle tree, right? And tied it all together with a double spend solution, gave the right incentives to the miners and to the users of the network, launched the code, did a few transactions, mined the first million Bitcoins, and then kind of gave it to society. It's almost like I wouldn't be surprised if it's like an alien us trying to save us from ourselves.
Wow.
Or somebody from the future who's who's like planted this and said, okay, here's the medicine you guys need, because otherwise you're going to destroy yourself, right? We have to create a movie. We're going to do a sci-fi movie. Let's
Okay.
write the script
Will
on
do.
this, right? Of us discovering that Satoshi is just somebody from the future. But seriously, the thing is that the reason I'm saying it's a woman, because I think women in general care much more about others. Like they don't come to this world like, I'm gonna beat everybody else and I'm just gonna be dominant and everybody's gonna do what I tell them, right? It's more about they care about society much more than men do. So
It's very counterintuitive. It's not what your brain automatically essentially goes to. It's like someone was thinking way, 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 way outside the box from. We've had thousands of years of programming of thinking that way, of thinking capitalistically and thinking, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with capitalism, but thinking in a way of, like that pyramid that pyramid scheme or pyramid shaped society, whereas this person was thinking of a whole nother society.
and if you watch the movie Beautiful Mind, right? I mean, I
Mm.
think they describe that best, where basically they say, look, if you, I mean, this is what's the name of the Nobel Prize winner, the scientist who actually the movie is about him. But anyway, his theory is that, okay, if you collaborate even with your competitors, you're gonna end up ahead than if you just compete. And humans as a whole, if you think of a human, right, that is a collaboration between 23,000 different genes. We have energy, we have a mining factory in each one of our cells where we effectively collaborating a symbiotic relationship with an alien, something that is not us. We're just feeding it and it gives us energy. So we are a form of this experiment where the many got together and created a being that competes with other many who created a being that won against all of the viruses and the small single cell creatures who did not want to collaborate, who did not try to win by collaborating. So nature shows you again and again that what we're trying to do here is this decentralized infrastructure and decentralized society is the winning formula, because our body is decentralized. I mean, we don't have, we have all of our cells communicate with each other, but there is no single cell that tells everybody else what to do. Not a single neuron, not a single cell in your heart, right? So all of these trillions of cells, decentralized cells, got together and in an organized fashion live a life and hopefully contribute to society and so on. So just follow nature and you'll do just fine, you know?
That was really, really nice. I haven't heard it that way before. It was very, very nice. So decentralization, that's inevitable. I've heard you say that before. And now I'm connecting the dots. Now I see what you mean by that. It's really nature. You can't really stop that. So that makes sense. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the banking system. Why does Goldman Sachs want Bitcoin? To me, it's counterintuitive. Like it's not their sort of cup of tea, but they're still doing it, I guess, to support their the demand of their clients. But do they really want it? Is it really good for them?
Well, all the banks eventually going to have to deal with this asset class, right? So the bigger the asset class gets, the more each bank's interface with it. Clients start asking about it. You need to transact in it because other banks, corresponding banks, are asking to work on it, and so I think we passed the point where a bank can say, okay, I'm just ignoring this, so I'm not dealing with this at all. And in each bank, inside the bank, we have Celsians in every bank.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Celsians in Citibank, and we have Celsians in JP Morgan, right? People who use Celsius. So there's a lot of people inside a bank who basically say, hey, this is a great thing and we should be adopting it. And at the same time, remember, a bank has a legal license to print money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't know that because they don't have a physical printer like a Dell printer that just prints sheets. They just create money out of thin air through fractional reserves.
Mm-hmm.
So most people, they don't teach you what is fractional reserves in school. So most people have no clue what I'm talking about, right?
Right.
So Ray Dalio has a great video about how the economics engine works.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only, I think, 40 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
Watch how the economic machine works. I think is the name of the video.
Yeah, I've seen that one. It's a must watch. Yeah.
Right. So my point is that when a bank has a license to print money, and then they take your deposit, they pay you nothing for it, and they make 10, 15, 20% on that money, right? Why would they allow any competition? Why would they allow any kind of foreign or external asset like crypto assets, right? Crypto digital assets to compete with that franchise? Because in DeFi, in this decentralized finance, you don't need the bank, you don't need an intermediary, you don't need anybody. You can do everything banks do with basically a smart contract and Ethereum or Cardano or any other chain, right? So banks are only doing it because they have to. They're only doing it because for their own survival. Some banks are going to say, just like with voice over IP, the phone companies hated me. You kidding me? They were like, we are some of the AT&T was the most profitable company in the world. Okay, look at them now, right? And they're not in that business anymore. They're in a wireless business, right? Their long lines, what they used to call long line business, disappeared, and that was 90% of their profits was from international calls. So that business became free. Like right now, we're talking for free. You're in Philly, but you could be sitting in Shanghai, and I would still be talking to you for free. So this paradigm shift, right? When you go from one business model to another, is devastating, and that's what's happening to banks right now. They know, they don't have to even think about it. They know that digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, decentralized finance, CeFi, is just going to destroy their business model, right? And so I think I'm hated even more than I used to be hated in the phone business, you know?
Wow. You have Warren Buffett breathing down your neck now.
Well, he called it rat poison square.
Yeah.
So, and guess what? He was the largest shareholders of all these banks until recently. He sold all of his banking stocks. But when he was saying all these bad things about Bitcoin, he was the largest shareholder. He didn't tell you, I am the largest shareholder of Wells Fargo, and that's why I hate Bitcoin.
No.
He just said to you, listen, don't buy this Bitcoin shit because, you know,
Rat
that's
poison
going to hurt
squared.
my bank.
What's Jeff Bezos thinking right now? You know, he's about to go to space. I don't think he's thinking about any of this stuff, but what's Jeff Bezos' stance? Do you have any idea what he's thinking?
Well, first time I met Jeff Bezos was in 1996 at
Mhm.
PC Forum
Wow.
in I think it was the Scottsdale. I think it's called the Scottsdale Princess or something like that. So we were at a conference, and he was pitching his company, Amazon. I was pitching Arbinet, and we were both trying to raise money for our ventures. I think he went public like the next year or something, and I did not go public until 2004. But you know, Jeff is the same thing, right? He put his blinders on.
Mhm.
He just said, I'm going to create a marketplace for everything. Started with books. So he's not done. I think he might take a year or two off, but I think he's going to definitely focus on something else
Mhm.
and try to do it big. Obviously, he's one of the richest people in the world. So
Yeah, he's going to space. I mean, if it wasn't for Elon putting Doge up in space, maybe Amazon would have done it. But who knows? I'm pretty excited about the whole space exploration thing. That's to me, that's just fascinating. Would you go to space if you had the opportunity to?
yeah, I mean, if it's safe and you can go and come back,
Mhm.
I wouldn't go to space in a one-way direction, you know,
Right.
but look, I mean, the universe is an amazing place. I mean, most of us live on this little tiny rock, and we think we understand everything, but we cannot perceive infinity. We don't understand that. Like we barely understand 100 million or a billion, right? Like, and here you're talking about trillions of trillions of trillions of miles that you can look in any direction into space, and you can go trillions and trillions and trillions times trillions of miles and not hit anything in any direction, right? That's how much space is out there. So so when you think about that, then you say, wait a second, what am I doing on this little rock here? You know, like you know, I'm wasting my time. I should be thinking about bigger things, right? Because so there's definitely things that we still don't understand. I think this infinity thing is still one of them. Infinity of space, infinity of matter, infinity of energy. So the, you know, quantum entanglement, all these things that our universe is made out of, or these are features of our universe. These are all things that baffle me, and I have these neurons screaming in my head, solve this problem. And I'm like, shh, sit quiet. I'm working on Celsius, you know?
Wow, Alex, this has been a wonderful time talking to you today. I wish I had more questions, but I'm all out now. So wanted to say again, thank you so much for coming on the show. How can people find more out about you and Celsius?
Sure. So follow me on Twitter at Mashinsky, my last name, and Celsius Network on YouTube. We have over 1,000 videos now. I do a weekly show every Friday, 1 p.m. If you want to watch it live, or you can watch it later. And we talk about all things crypto and Celsius and the community. Usually take about 30 questions every show from the audience. and download the app. I mean, the best thing to do is to download the Celsius Network app, test it out, put $50 in there. And I guarantee you that after you got 2 interest payments every Monday, every week, you're going to get an interest payment and you don't have to do anything. It's going to change you, because you'll be like, wait a second, my money's working for me. I can sleep and my money's still working, and I
Yeah, and
actually
you don't have to
earning real
trade.
yield.
You don't have to worry about trading or anything like that.
Exactly. You don't have to do anything. The opposite. If you don't do anything, you earn. If you start doing things, you don't earn. So it's the opposite of what you normally are being conditioned to do, because most places in the world try to, like Coinbase wants you to do as many transactions as possible. That's how they make money, when you transact. Celsius is trying to get you to just sit on your hands, hodl, and reach financial freedom, financial independence.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.